guys. I think we're gonna get started. Welcome to history. I need to get this link sent off to our class really quick though. So 1 second. Just bear with me. Those that are watching the replay, you probably just skip forward. When I take my headphones off, that's probably when I start the lesson, so you probably just keep that in mind. Just want to get a link put in Canvas for you guys. I was trying to do pre-recorded stuff for you guys, and it's fun to put over the videos. I wonder what you guys like, if you like having the videos over like what I'm reading to kind of give a visual sense of what's going on. But if you just like the live lessons, we just do live lessons. I just am trying to figure out what you guys like, and then what works with everybody's schedule, especially my own. So trying to figure all that out. Okay. All right, so those that are joining, okay, should be able to watch it in Canvas now. Cool. Let's get this started then. Oh, hey Audrey, sorry I missed you. Hey Kaden, glad to have you here. I guess I missed Audrey. I was just getting things set up. But I think, is Audrey, I feel bad asking this, but I'm pretty sure Audrey's in the other class though. Right? Or is she? Oh man. Yeah, I think Audrey's in the other class. Yep. So it's awesome that she stopped by, but yeah, she's in another class. Okay, so let's get this going. All right. Welcome. Chapter 3. So what we want to do is we want to go back to chapter 1 really quick and read the first section, because this kind of gives us the foundation for what we're learning today. So let's scroll all the way back up to chapter 1 and read the first paragraph in this section. Whoops, sorry. This one right here, the very end of the book. The end of the Roman paragraph, the end of the Roman Empire. We're just going to read this first section, all right? So this, again, will set the stage for chapter 3 right here. So we're in chapter 1, the last section, the first paragraph. This is going to set the stage for chapter 3 that we're learning today. And it says, "You may have heard the expression, Rome wasn't built in a day. It means that it takes a long time to accomplish a big task. It took hundreds of years before the Roman Empire reached its peak, and then it lasted 400 years more. Eventually, the Roman Empire was split into two parts, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, ruled from Constantinople." All right, so the Western Roman Empire was the center in Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire ruled from Constantinople. Hi, is that Adriana? How's it going? Okay, so the Roman Empire eventually separated into two parts, the Western and the Eastern Roman Empire. And for chapter 3, we're going to continue to learn about, as it says the chapter title, the two churches. Oh, I didn't want that. Sorry, let's go here. And then let's bring this one up. Okay, perfect, there you go. So the Christian church that was based in Rome was a powerful influence across the entire Roman Empire at its height, or at its peak of the empire when things were going great. Now we're going to be learning about the two churches. So there was a Christian church at the peak of the Roman Empire, and now that the Roman Empire has been split, now it seems like the Christian church maybe has been split into two churches. So we're going to read about the Christian church in Rome when the Roman Empire split into two parts. So let's call attention. Oh, I'm glad I got it right, Adriana. Thanks. Glad to have you here. Caden as well. It's awesome. So let's call attention to our big question. Our big question is, why did the collapse of the Western Roman Empire make it possible for the bishop of Rome to become more powerful? Why would a collapse of one empire make it possible for the bishop of the other to become more powerful? So as we read, let's look for ways of why when the Western Roman Empire fell or collapsed, that it made it possible for the bishop of Rome to become more powerful. Let's look for ways to find answers to that big question. So we're going to learn how the Christian church in Rome influenced the Germanic groups that had invaded the Roman Empire, and how the bishop of Rome rose to power in the Western Roman Empire. All right, let's us start reading. The bishop of Rome. Although the city of Rome was much smaller after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, it was still a city. People living in the city needed food and other supplies. It is very difficult for people who live in cities to grow the food they need. Food has to come from farming areas outside the city. After the fall of the empire, however, there was no one to take charge and arrange to bring these kinds of supplies into Rome. Who would perform these duties now? So they need food. How are they going to get it? Remember when Attila the Hun almost attacked Rome? The person who talked him out of doing that was Pope Leo I, Rome's bishop. Remember Attila, when he went to meet Pope Leo, he said he saw a halo and he saw angels surrounding Pope Leo, and so he decided not to. Or that's one theory of why he didn't attack. And here is our first vocabulary word. And remember, you can get extra credit in history if you take one of the vocabulary words from each chapter and use that vocabulary word in a sentence that you create on your own. So you can't take a sentence from the chapter, but you have to create your own sentence using a vocabulary word, and I can give you some extra credit points. The term pope is another title given to the bishop of Rome. There was still an emperor at that time, but the power of the emperor was fading fast. The power of Rome's bishop, on the other hand, was growing. All right, scroll down and read this caption to learn what this picture is about. Looks pretty cool. Looks like this person has a lot of gold. Popes in the Middle Ages, such as Pope Gregory I, shown here, often had a lot of power. A lot of power, maybe a lot of money. I don't think that, robe was very cheap. All right, let's continue to read and follow along. Our next section, the victor's convert. Many Germanic groups conquered the Roman lands, and yet, in a sense, the victors had also been conquered. All right, what does victors mean? And how are they also conquered? So a victor is a person who defeats an opponent or enemy, the winner. So if you're playing in a soccer game or a basketball game and you are on the winning team, you are the victor. And so it's saying the Germanic groups, remember the Germanic groups, the Germanic king Odoacer in chapter 1 came and was a big part of the fall of Roman Empire in 476. That was an important date. So it's saying that these Germanic groups, even though they were victors, now they are being conquered as well. They weren't conquered by the Roman army, but by the Roman church. Rome was a Christian empire when it fell in 476, and many of the people who took Rome's lands eventually converted to Christianity. All right, let's pause right there. We have two vocabulary words to help us understand what we just read. So Christian meaning related to the beliefs based on the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. So Jesus Christ, kind of the root word of Christian. Those that believe those teachings are considered Christian. And then converted, meaning to change religious beliefs, to switch from one religion to another. So it's talking about how the Christian empire fell, and many who took the Rome's lands eventually converted to Christianity. They also adopted Rome's customs or traditions. And here's our last vocabulary word for this page. A custom is a tradition or a way of doing something that belongs to a particular society, place, or time. So those that have been to Hozho before this year, so previous years, it was a custom that the principal had you guys all meet together and had morning announcements where you guys would do the Pledge of Allegiance, recite the proclamation, and maybe talk about some music and art. That was a custom of Hozho. It was something that was specific and unique to Hozho Academy. So that's kind of an example of what a custom is. Many also began to speak the language of Rome. Over time, the Roman language and the different parts of the old empire began to develop into different but related languages. This is why modern French, Italian, and Spanish are called Romance languages. These languages developed from the Latin language of Rome over hundreds of years. Even though newcomers had conquered Rome, they admired what it stood for. It had been the center of the most powerful empire for hundreds of years. Rome's conquerors respected and held on to many Roman laws and customs. They also kept the Latin language and Roman religion. So usually when people come in and take over something, they like to change things the way that they wanted it. But these victors that came and conquered and took over Rome actually admired what Rome was doing and wanted to keep that language and the traditions and the customs the same. They converted to Christianity. So maybe they took over Rome because they wanted to, be in charge of it, but be a part of it as well. Here's a picture of some Roman letters on a tomb. And if we scroll down, here is another picture of Romulus Augustus, the last emperor of Rome, surrendered to the German king Odoacer in 476. And we learned about that in chapter 1. So let's continue to read. When there was no longer a Western empire, the Bishop of Rome became the most important official in the city. So the emperor fell because the empire fell. So the bishop, the leader of the church of Rome, became the most important official in the city. Pope Leo said that the Bishop of Rome was the most important official in the Christian church. He claimed that his power as Bishop of Rome reached far beyond the city of Rome itself. What were the reasons behind Leo's claim to power? He claimed the power of Bishop of Rome came from Jesus himself through St. Peter. So these people that have Christian beliefs, who believe in Jesus of Nazareth and probably the miracles that he performed and how he was the leader of this church, well, they're saying that the Bishop of Rome had received power from Jesus. And that's why, and it was passed down through apostles or saints. And they're saying through St. Peter he got this power. And that's how he's claiming his power, this Bishop of Rome. Leo said that Jesus chose Peter to be the head of the church. According to Christian belief, Peter left Jerusalem after Jesus was killed and went to Rome. Leo and his supporters believe that Peter became the first bishop of Rome. The bishops of Rome that followed him were heirs to Peter's position as head of the Christian church. And that's what I was just kind of talking about. So using this argument, continue to read, Leo and those who followed him claimed that they were the Papa, from which we would get the word Pope. So they were the Pope or the Papa or father of the Christian church. With the former Western Roman Empire broken up into smaller kingdoms and territories, the Bishop of Rome, as leader of the church in all these regions, claimed power throughout Europe. Hey, Elena. Or Elena, pretty sure that's who it is. Elena, is that how I say it? Elena? I probably butchered again. It's been a while. Give me a break, please. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I think I overthink names, and so I just butcher names when I overthink them. So sorry. It happened with my wife, okay, so give me a break. Her name is Marianne, and I always wanted to say Marianne. Took me a little bit, all right, so. Names are not my strong suit. Okay, so we learned about how Rome was getting conquered, and those that were conquering it, the victors, adopted or kept the same customs of Rome, and now the bishop of Rome is claiming power and saying that power came from Jesus of Nazareth. Look at this cool cathedral in Notre Dame or Notre Dame that was built in the 1100s. It looks pretty awesome. This is Gothic architecture and very popular in the Middle Ages. Okay, so continue to read. The Eastern Empire. And if you have questions about what we're reading, please put them in the chat right now. I hope I'm trying to explain what's going on in a different way. So if reading it doesn't make sense, hopefully when I pause and explain, it makes sense. All right. I hope we're finding reasons why when the Western Empire fell, the Bishop of Rome gained power. All right. So that's our big question, and we're looking for reasons for that. So I hope we're finding some reasons. All right, so continue to read. The Eastern Empire. Not everyone agreed with the claims of the Bishop of Rome. So not everyone's agreeing that the Bishop of Rome has this power that he is claiming to have. So in fact, there were 4 other bishops who also viewed themselves as the leaders of the Christian church. These were the bishops of Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. These cities were all located in the Eastern Roman Empire. Remember how the Roman Empire was divided into 2 parts, the Western and Eastern Empire? The Western was in Rome, and the Eastern Empire was in Byzantine, or it was also known as the Byzantine Empire. And this is in the early 300s. Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor of the Roman Empire, built a new eastern capital at the site of ancient Greek city Byzantium. He named this new capital Constantinople, and so this new capital that was back in the 300s at this time. So now going forward, this capital Constantinople is trying to claim power trying to also claim power. While the Western Empire was weakened by internal problems and eventually destroyed by invaders, the Eastern Empire survived. All right, so internal, let's pause for a second. What does internal mean? When there were internal problems that led to the eventual downfall and destruction of the Western Empire, what does that mean? Thanks, Caden. Appreciate it. You guys are the best students ever. But can you guys help me answer this question? What does internal mean? If there were internal problems within the Western Empire, how would internal problems weaken and lead to the downfall of the empire? We know that there were some invaders, so some people came in, but what does internal problems mean? For example, if we were having internal problem, if we were all in school right now at Hozho and in person, and we were having internal problems in our classroom, like, why do you think that would be an issue? Like, what does that mean? And reflect about what we read in chapter 1. We learned about some of the Roman, generals and governors. I think it was the Roman generals. They were having internal problems. So internal, meaning the problems were all within the border of the empire. Their problems, you couldn't get the proper education. That's correct. Yeah. So if we were in a classroom and we were having internal problems, there was fighting or too much disagreeing, that classes couldn't be taught. And you couldn't learn the things that you were supposed to learn or get the proper education, right? So these internal problems all were in the border within the Western Empire. It wasn't because of outside forces. Yes, outside forces like invaders eventually came in, but as we learned in chapter 1, the Roman generals were fighting with each other. They wanted the power, and that was internal. That was within Rome, the generals were fighting with each other, and that made them weak to the outside invaders. So the Eastern Empire survived. They weren't having the internal problems. Yeah, good job, for sure. So continue to read, follow along with me, starting right here with however, on page 21. However, the Eastern Empire culture was much less Roman than the Western Empire. The eastern part of the empire was more Greek than Roman. Most of its people did not speak Latin or languages that were influenced by Latin. Do you think the bishops of Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem were more influenced by the bishop of Constantinople or by the bishop of Rome? So these three like cities, do you think they were influenced by Rome, or do you think they were influenced by Constantinople? They weren't really following what Rome was doing, what the Roman Western Empire was doing. Do you think they were influenced by it, or do you think they were influenced by someone else? Well, as we continue to read, if you thought Constantinople, you were right. Over the time of differences between Christians in the eastern and western regions increased, there had always been some differences, of course. Even though both groups were Christians, they spoke different languages and had different cultures. However, more and more disagreements sprang up. Some of these disagreements may seem trivial today, but in the Middle Ages they were not. For example, Christians in the former Western Empire used flatbread made without yeast in their holy ceremonies. Christians in their Eastern Empire used bread made with yeast in their holy ceremonies. So let's pause. Here's another vocabulary, phrase. A holy ceremony is a religious act or ritual performed according to tradition. So they used flatbread without yeast, so it probably didn't rise, because the yeast would make it rise in their holy ceremony. So maybe in their sacrament, when they took bread and water or wine in remembrance of Jesus, who they thought was their leader, who they thought, who they got their power from. All right, continue to read right here. More important was the larger issue of who was in charge of the church. So we have these four cities claiming power to the church. Bishops in the Eastern Empire did not like accepting the rule of the Bishop of Rome. As the final word on all church matters, as Bishop of Rome as the final word on all church matters. They were used to ruling in a more cooperative manner in which each bishop had a vote. Oh, I'm glad, Caden. I'm glad to hear that. That's good. You guys are learning, and I'm learning to be a better teacher as well. So I appreciate, anything I can do to help you guys succeed and understand the material. So just to recap what I just read, the bishops from Constantinople, Antioch, Jerusalem, and the last one was Alexandria. They were used to where each bishop could vote on church matters, but the Bishop of Rome is trying to claim all the power, and he has the final word on all church matters, and they don't like that. So over the time, the bishops in Eastern Church developed a very different tradition of governing the church and its religious customs. So reading this the second to last section. They did, however, accept the belief that the Bishop of Rome was the heir of St. Peter. So they did accept that belief that the Bishop of Rome was the heir to St. Peter. Peter was who they say got the power from Jesus to start the church. The power came from Peter down to the Bishop of Rome. That's what they're claiming. In 1054, the differences between the bishops of Rome and Constantinople came to a head. After some major disagreements, the two churches separated. So they recognized that the Bishop of Rome was the heir to St. Peter, but then there were so many differences that they ended up splitting into two churches. Okay, and this is our last section, guys. We're doing really good. Okay, so two separate churches. And again, I guess before we finish, let's recap. Let's scroll up and recap what our big question is. So you guys will be prepared for that. Why did the collapse of the Western Roman Empire make it possible for the Bishop of Rome to become more powerful? All right. And then our last section, 2 separate churches. Follow along with me. Christian bishops in the Eastern Empire, including Bulgarians, Serbs, Russians, Syrians, and Egyptians, chose to join with the Bishop of Constantinople. People on both sides of this argument expected that the division between the two parts of the church was just temporary. Over time, however, the two sides did not get back together. In fact, they found more reasons to disagree. Today, the church that is headed by the Bishop of Rome, or as you might know, the Pope, is known as the Roman Catholic Church. The church in the region that was ruled by Constantinople, now Istanbul and Turkey, is generally known as the Eastern Orthodox Church. So if we scroll down to this picture really quick, you have the Western Roman Empire, which is the Roman Catholic Church, Latin speaking, and then here the Eastern Empire, or the Eastern Church, is known as the Eastern Orthodox Church, and they were Greek speaking. And the rest of this unit, so continuing on, we will mostly focus on the lands of the Western Church. Over here, the Roman Catholic Church, the Western Church. And let's read this caption below. At the time, most people thought the conflict between the two parts of the church would be resolved. But as we know now, they didn't really resolve anything. Okay. So let's recap again the big question. Why did the collapse of the Western Roman Empire make it possible for the Bishop of Rome to become more powerful? All right. So some hints are, think about Christianity. What happened with Christianity after the collapse of the Western Empire? Think about the Pope. Think about the customs. And think about how the Pope was claiming power. Those are some tips and some tips and some hints to help you with your big question. So remember, there's the big question for chapter 3, and then also chapter 3 vocabulary. Each chapter that we cover here in this history section will have 2 assignments that go along with each chapter: the vocabulary and the big question. All right. And doing those things will get you guys prepared, along with reading, will get you prepared for the unit assessment that you'll take at the end of the quarter. But that is it, everybody. Thanks for joining. It's glad to have you guys here. I hope you guys enjoyed the live lesson. And again, let me know if you like the live lesson format or if you've been enjoying the recorded ones that have some pictures and video overlaid as I'm reading it. I can do both. We already did the vocab. Great job, Caden. Well done. That is awesome. And remember that you do have to work through these sections. You should. I think it's a requirement to work through the sections in order. So when you go to the module, it should be in order. Good job, Elena. That's awesome. Okay, well, that's it. Oh, nice, you did it too? Good job, Adriana, that's awesome. So, I did the first King Arthur reading yesterday. If you go on Canvas, you can access chapters 1 through 6, and then on YouTube, and I probably just need to make a Canvas assignment that has this video. But then there's also the introduction to King Arthur the introduction to the book and the prologue, which sets the stage and the setting for King Arthur. So I highly recommend that you either read the introduction and the prologue, or follow along or listen to me read it. Okay. The chapters 1 through 6 were kind of long, so make sure you get that done. Get it. Maybe break it up. There are weekly due dates. I don't know if you guys read my announcement or if your parents and guardians read my email. There are weekly due dates, and that will help me and help you to stay on track. So tomorrow morning, on Saturday mornings, I can get onto Canvas and see who's done the weekly assignments, and if not, then I can send out a message to be like, hey, you missed this, make sure you get it done. I don't want anybody to be cramming before Thanksgiving break, to have to worry about doing any homework on Thanksgiving break. It's not worth it. All right, guys, like, get your work done before Thanksgiving break and enjoy and relax during Thanksgiving break. That will be the most enjoyable. And then the same thing before Christmas break. Make sure we finish the quarter strong. We're not trying to get all this homework done and cram, okay? But that's it. I am gonna end the stream unless you guys have any more questions. But that was a good lesson. I'm glad you guys were here. You guys interacted well with me, which I really appreciate it. Kept the chat on topic, and I think it was a cool lesson. I enjoyed it. Hope you did as well. But that is it. Okay, guys. Okay, class. I will talk to you guys later, all right? You guys are the best.